Also, a video that dropped on our YouTube page today was another episode of Panthers Playbook. Myself and Chris Lee, who co-host that episode or that show together, also available wherever you get your podcasts. We had a conversation, something that actually kind of ties into what we talked about earlier this week, Graham, right after the Super Bowl, what the Philadelphia Eagles did to the Kansas City Chiefs and the domination of which they displayed. It was a domination from their defense. And there's been a lot of conversation about what the Carolina Panthers should be doing in the draft this coming season. All right, this coming fall, I should say, leading up to the 2025 season. I brought up how the Philadelphia Eagles, over the last 4 years, look at the last four drafts, 2021, 22, 23, and 2024. Those 4 years, look at the premium draft positions. Right? Or the rounds, the premium rounds of the NFL draft. Rounds 1, 2, and 3. That's day 1 and day 2 of the draft. Those are your premium draft picks because they're in the top 100. Where have they spent their draft capital? I mentioned how the Philadelphia Eagles had drafted 5 defensive linemen. 3 of them interior, 2 of them as edge rushers. They also drafted another off-ball linebacker, 3 defensive backs, and 3 offensive linemen, and 1 wide receiver. That's where they spend a majority of their high picks, the interior of the game. Offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, and then also the guys that cover it. Those are the premium positions. The more quote-unquote premium positions in the NFL, the ones that really get paid the most money, and a lot of teams really value, offensive line, more particularly the offensive tackle positions, but offensive line, the defensive line, in particular edge rushers, people that can really get to the quarterback, and then people that cover the receivers, got to have people that can cover, and then obviously the most premium one being a quarterback. Those are the premium positions really on the field. Not saying other positions don't matter, but generally, if you have a really good offensive line, if you have a good quarterback, good defensive front, and guys that can cover, you're going to be winning a lot more games than usual, than most others. We win a lot more than what you lose. And look at some of the teams that have consistently been winning over the last several years that have built up really good rosters. For example, the Baltimore Ravens. I know they lost in the divisional round to the Buffalo Bills. We'll get to them in the second here in just a moment. But if you look over the last 4 years, rounds 1, 2, and 3 for the Baltimore Ravens, they've drafted 3 defensive linemen, 3 offensive linemen, 3 defensive backs, 2 linebackers, and 2 wide receivers. Where's the core of that? Those premium positions. Kansas City. Been to 3 straight Super Bowls. Now, granted, Kansas City has traded some picks to get players during the course of the season because they needed to add a piece because someone got hurt, those kinds of things. So maybe not as many picks, but 3 offensive linemen, 2 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, 2 defensive backs, and they've drafted 3 wide receivers. Buffalo, 3 D linemen, 2 linebackers, 2 offensive linemen, 2 defensive backs, 1 wide receiver, 1 running back. Heck, the Detroit Lions have drafted 5 defensive linemen and 5 defensive backs in the first 3 rounds over the last 4 years. What have those teams been over the last 4 years? Really damn good. Really damn good. If you look at the Carolina Panthers on the flip side, what have they been the last 4 years? Even going back a little bit further than that. Pretty damn bad. Pretty damn bad. If you look back at what the Carolina Panthers have drafted, they've drafted 2 offensive linemen. Ike Ekwonu, Brady Christensen. We're looking at the last 4 years, rounds 1, 2, and 3. They've drafted 2 offensive linemen, 1 defensive lineman, edge rusher, that's DJ Johnson, which they used another pick to move up to take, and he hasn't done anything. So of the front, the trenches that everyone talks about, are you good on the defensive line and the offensive line? They've invested 3 picks, 3 premium picks over the last 4 years, and only one of those guys actually plays, and that's Ike Ekwonu. Brady Christensen was a really good plug-and-play piece. I'll actually say Brady Christensen can be a starter because before he got hurt, he was a starter in his second year playing left guard, got nicked up. So I'll give you Brady Christensen. And then one linebacker that's off ball, that's Trevin Wallace. But you also look if they've drafted 2 quarterbacks, Matt Corral, 3rd-round pick, and Bryce Young. Matt Corral didn't even play a snap for you. They've drafted 3 wide receivers in that stretch. Terrace Marshall Jr., Jonathon Mingo, both 2nd-round picks, and then Xavier Legette. 2 of those guys aren't even on your team anymore. And you've drafted 1 defensive back. That's J.C. Horn. You see what I'm talking about here? Where they have prioritized drafting, again, I mentioned, over the last 4 years, in the first 3 rounds, you've drafted 2 offensive linemen and 1 defensive lineman / outside linebacker. That's it. And you wonder why your defensive line couldn't get to the quarterback. You also wonder why you had to go out outside of your organization and spend big money on 2 offensive linemen just to protect Bryce Young. Because you haven't invested in those positions. You haven't invested properly in those positions. And you wonder why teams that invest properly into those premium spots, Baltimore, Kansas City, Buffalo, Detroit, oh, that's funny. They sustain success, Philadelphia included.
And think about how good those quarterbacks are mobily.
Yeah.
They're great in the pass play, but also they know they have plenty of time to go through the progressions, go through their reads, and then if nothing's there, they can tuck it and run. First season, Bryce Young, it seemed like he would try to do that even earlier this year. He would try to scramble outside the pocket, show off his mobile ability, but he would have his offensive line collapse in front of him, and next thing you know, he's down on the ground taking a sack.
Yeah. He got beat up his rookie year. But guess what? You put a bunch of money into that offensive line. Oh, it's funny how things got better. So when it comes to drafting, you've already spent enough draft capital on wide receivers with premium picks over the last 4 years. Again, 2 guys that aren't even on your team anymore. Bad drafting. Dan Morgan better get this right. He has to get this right. Put an emphasis drafting in the premium positions. Solidify the fronts.